Hi there, my name is Santino Pino, and I'm a former corrections officer, and I'm going to answer the the internet's most burning questions about working in prison and inmates and officers and stuff like that. So let's just jump into it. First question: what really happened your first night in prison? Um, I love how movies play this up, right? The first night in prison. The first night in prison generally is pretty boring, okay? Because the first night in prison, depending on the type of prison that they're going in, every prison has some type of something called intake, where they accept inmates, where they process inmates. That's where they get their photos taken. Most of the time, they've got fingerprinting every facility that they go to. So it's really boring. And then you're given a cell, right? A cell or housing assignment, and you're put out there. So most of the time, when an inmate gets to prison, most of the time, by the time that they're getting to their housing unit, by the time they're getting to their cell, if they're general population, uh, it's it's about nighttime. It's almost time to get locked in. It's almost time for lockdown. By the time they get there, they've been assigned a roommate. One of the things that happens is in prison there's something called separatee status. So, and this is public information. So I always try and be very careful about not giving away stuff that's sensitive but unclassified or whatever on here. But this one is really public knowledge, right? So there's something called separatee status, where if they have any type of gang affiliation that might cause a problem with a certain cellmate, if they've had a fight with a family member, something, they look at every factor. If you think of a factor as to why someone couldn't be a roommate, it's considered. All right, there's just a million different factors. So first night in prison is really boring. Their first day in the general population, that's when they're getting to know their new friends and they're the people that are going to take them in and take care of them and all that stuff. So really the only people that they met on the first night, the first inmates uh, that meet them will be just their cellmate, and then their cellmate will probably introduce them to their clique the next morning. So a lot of these are played up in movies, just to let you know. Okay, next one. What's one mistake that gets inmates hurt instantly? Okay, one mistake that gets inmates hurt instantly is very simply this, and I said this when I was a supervisor. I said this when I was an acting supervisor. I said this anytime that I had to talk to an officer, and I said, don't catch a case simply because you were too lazy to do your rounds. Okay. Most law enforcement officers, and this is all any agency, okay, any agency, you're really paid for monitoring and response, right? You're paid to respond to a certain incident, monitor certain things, all that stuff. So when you're breaking away when you're breaking away from an officer is breaking away from their routine, where they're not doing their rounds staggered at random intervals, when you're not keeping an eye on your population, that's when inmates can get hurt. It's been, and the grand majority of officers do their rounds, get out there because you're just walking around and checking, make sure, and just by patrolling your area, you prevent a lot of bad things from happening. And then other mistakes, like mistakes where inmates hurt themselves, is when they come in and they try to establish themselves too quickly. They come in, and I have seen that where this young buck that sees a whole bunch of muscles in the mirror that doesn't really have them goes and tries to front somebody off, and that doesn't end well. That happens every now and then. You see that more in movies, but it's based in real life. It has happened. But really, just one of the other things too, and this is law enforcement in general, is something that can hurt officers is staying in a routine, like always making your rounds at 15 minutes after the hour. You know, like if they know when you're going to be there, then they just plan around you to do bad things. So so there's not really one mistake that gets inmates hurt instantly, but there's a lead up to it. There's things that we're not doing as officers along the way. Do COs actually let inmates fight? You know what's funny is Most of the time when I'm on this channel is I'm reacting and just giving my perspective on different news articles about the Bureau of Prisons, right? And I'm waiting for an article to cover this because if you only look at the first 20 to 30 seconds of an inmate fight, and that's all you look at, and one of these days, one of these videos is going to make the internet, okay? And it's going to show inmates fighting, and it's going to show either one or two or five or 10 or 12 or more inmates fighting, and one officer monitoring that situation, and the news will lambaste that officer, okay, for not jumping into a fight with 12 guys. Number one, COs don't take sides, okay? We want the fight to stop. And if one officer got involved in a one-on-one fight between two inmates, you're taking sides, right? You're going to be stopping one while the other one's assaulting the other one, right? So if you look at the first 20 to 30 seconds of any inmate fight, it almost looks like that because officers need to wait for backup. An officer may only respond physically to a fight if it is safe to do so. Okay. We want everybody going home safe at night. Now, there's been plenty of times that I responded to an incident. We had plenty of people, and I still got hurt, and other officers got hurt because we're fighting, bad guys, right? But the some of the worst injuries is when I saw people trying to be Superman, right? Like I'm just going to put it this way: inmates work out a lot more than you do. Just going to put that out there. You see an inmate that doesn't seem like much, and then you see him on the rec yard doing 100 inverted push-ups, right? These guys work out all day long. Okay. So no, one singular officer should not just jump into a fight. He should let them fight until whatever their response team is. So whatever, there's a zoned response or a team response or whatever it is, you need to wait for backup to get there before you actually engage in the fight. And the benefit is also too is you don't want the officer, if there's only one officer in that area, you actually don't want them involved. You want them giving you radio calls so they can tell you what's going on. So if anything, I would prefer if I was supervising and there was a large inmate population, I wouldn't mind if the officer did get safe until response team got there. That way they can tell us what we're walking into. But the greatest fear is walking into an incident where all we hear is some shuffles on the radio, so we know that there's some type of fight going on and we're getting no words. Those ones scared me the most because you don't know what you're walking into, and you might have heard the last rumblings of your partner, of your buddy that was just alive. And you don't want to walk into that. But most of the time when you heard that, it's just them getting involved, probably a little bit before they should have. But I also get the the immediate response of reacting and jumping in. So, but no, we don't let them fight. We don't. Officers don't let inmates plan fights. They don't. There's no like prison UFC like some of these movies. Like every Michael J. White movie is somehow there's some type of MMA, secret MMA club within anything that he's doing, street racing, working in prison, gangs, that does not exist in prison. It's nothing like that. What scared me the most as a CO, I'm going to say this first, is that I think the majority of people that become corrections officers are not easily scared. Okay. Like in situations, I've been in situations with me and another inmate or a group of inmates where I knew there could be the possibility that it's going to get physical, and many times it did. What scared me the most as a CO was very similar to the question that I was just asking is when I can't get a hold of one of my officers that I work with or worked with. I'm calling them. If I had to call you two or three times on the radio, like I'm sending people or I'm responding myself to see you. That one scared me, right? Um, you know, uh, it, being a corrections officer is an extreme job. It is an extreme job, and I'm probably going to say it in every video. I've said to corrections agencies that you really should have some type of agreement where you let your officers get their story out there in their way. Have an agreement where it's got to be positive. They can't disparage the agency. That would be fine. Okay. I'm not saying just give them an open mic because most of the time you don't want that. You want it to at least be controlled. Um, but get people need to get their stories out there to understand that uh, you know I think corrections officers are the toughest people on the planet. I get it. There's probably an argument for a lot of different things, and one of the most common things is, well, what about soldiers and different people in the military? You know, even if they're in a war zone, they're probably only in there for about 9 months, and corrections officers are in that war zone for 20 years. And I'll die on that hill. I know there'll probably be some people that maybe get at me in the comments about that, but it's the truth. Corrections officers are the toughest people on the planet. Um, and on top of that, the government doesn't even think to cycle them out. You know, get okay, they've been behind bars, working behind bars for 10 years. The thing that freaked me out the most as a corrections officer is not really part of this question, but the thing that freaked me out, the thing that actually turned me into an entrepreneur instead of spending the next 15 or 20 years working in a prison system, was uh, the average corrections officer's last birthday is 57 because of the stress that they put their bodies through. There's not many other jobs that have a life expectancy that long. And I've had to bury a lot of friends way too soon just because the stress killed them. So that's what scared me the most or freaked me out, if you want to call that scaring. But in prison, there were very few times that I ever even felt an adrenaline rush while things were happening. That was my job. My job was to keep the public safe, keep staff safe, and keep other inmates safe. And I accepted that job going in, and I can't think of a time where I freaked out or froze. And you want to know something? If I freaked out or froze, I would just tell you here because I do believe that many people, including me, have the breaking point where just stress and pressure will get them to shut down. I've seen that with different officers and supervisors and executives in the years. I can't really think of a time that really happened to me. And many officers will go through their career just not dealing with that because we mentally prepared for the job, right? And if you mentally prepare for a job, you're not going to have much that goes in there. But yeah, that CO average last birthday is 57. That freaked me out, man. That freaked me out a lot. How easy is it to sneak contraband into prison? Not at all. Okay? Not at all. And when you get caught, and here's the thing, you always will, right? And right now, listen, I get these videos like there's the majority of the people are I can see the traffic is the majority of the Bureau of Prisons or corrections in general watch the video, but also there's probably going to be some inmate families that watch this trying to get some tips. And here's what I'm going to tell you: don't even try. Don't even try. And here's I'm going to speak to inmate families right now. Okay, I'm going to speak to you because I want you to hear me when I say this, okay? You're going to hear all these different ways that different inmate families and their best friends and all, you're going to find ways that they're saying, oh, yeah, well, this guy's getting this stuff in and he's doing it A, B, C, okay? Here's what I can tell you, okay? Every single time that there is some access point where contraband is getting in, the prison finds out about it. Okay. I'm not going to say how. I'm not going to say how. And I promise you this, okay? To the people that want to sneak stuff into prison right now, you're hearing my voice thinking, I'm not going to get caught. You're really hearing my voice and you thinking, oh, he's just saying, other people will get caught. I won't. And that's the same type of mentality for like a street cop when they're pulling somebody over and the person getting pulled over is like, oh, they'll never look for the drugs in the glove compartment, right? It's ridiculous. Listen, every way of sneaking contraband into prison has been tried. I mean, I've seen a helicopter rented to try and drop like $20 worth of stuff of contraband onto a rec yard. Like I have seen every single way that you could try and introduce contraband. And you know how I saw, I'll just say this, okay? I'm just going to say this. Do you know how I saw the helicopter? Like I didn't catch the helicopter. I didn't catch a glimpse of the helicopter. I was standing there watching, waiting. It arrived, it left because we knew it was coming. And that's the only things I'm going to say about that. Okay. It's the only thing I'm going to say. You're going to get caught, and they already know that you're doing it. They're just letting you build a case against yourself. Stop trying to sneak contraband into prison. Stop trying. Let your inmate buddy do their time. Okay. I've addressed officers and staff bringing contraband into prison on previous videos. Go check them out. But I really want to talk to inmate families. Is don't even try. You're going to get caught, and it's going to go from having one of your family members in prison to having multiple family members in prison. And it's just not worth it, especially if you're like raising kids or whatever. I mean, it's just not worth it. So don't even try. It's not easy. It's not easy. And the only time that I've ever seen where there was like it's almost like a streamlined contraband coming in for it's always been a short amount of time, and it's because they capitalize on a temporary security setback, right? There was for some reason when that officer worked that post, or we didn't know about this maintenance problem over here, but we discover that, it's always going to be found. It is not easy to find contraband. It's not easy to sneak contraband into prison, and they already know you're going to try, just to let you know. What do inmates never say, but every CO knows? I get that this is a question on the internet, but I it does make me think of one thing, okay? I, I think the longer you work in prison, you get a good radar as to sensing what the environment that you're working in is. So I can give you one. Is that now there are an inmate issued uniform, and this part is kind of true in movies and in real life, is that yes, there is a set of clothes that looks the same, almost the same as every set of clothes that every other inmate has. And the reason I say it almost looks the same is because just like a job where you have a uniform, sometimes they go through different vendors, and you might have the exact same color, but it was made by a different company, so it's slightly different style, but still it just looks the same when they're stacked up and folded, right? Clothes or whatever. So I know I'm talking about clothes. I'm getting to the point. Is so inmates are given three, four, five sets of inmate uniforms along with underwear, and sometimes they're given some undershirts too. Most of them are just going to be like if you were any type of military or uniform service, the white boxers that lose their elasticity after about one wash. Same government boxers are given to inmates, but then they can also purchase sweatpants and other very generalized clothes. It's almost like looking at in all honesty, like the clothes that inmates can purchase for their own personal wearing in prison are very, very similar to looking at the cheap sweats at Walmart. It really is. Okay. Just very plain, no logos, nothing like that. But what does this have to do with what do inmates never say, but every CO knows? Well, one night I'm working a unit in a federal penitentiary, and I look out, and every one of my inmates is it's 8 or 8:30 at night, and every one of the inmates in my housing unit is wearing their inmate issued government uniform. None of them are wearing sweatpants. None of them are wearing their personal shoes. They can buy tennis shoes. If not, most of them are given like some type of work boot that they can work out in, that they can work in. But every single one of them was wearing, and then on top of that, it was like summer and they're wearing their jackets. Okay, so that's being called armored up, right? So inmates were armored up. So there was something going on. They were having a disagreement. They were mad at each other, and it was the black inmates and the white inmates were about to have a scuffle. And the bottom line is that really when you look at the main represented races in prison, you have white, black, Hispanic, And then and as we're getting further, there's less and less and less, right? Um, Depending on the region you're in, you'll have different inmate populations, maybe a little bit higher. This prison was in Arizona, so there's a little bit higher of a Native American population in there. So what happens is now the either the Hispanic inmates and the Native American inmates, either they have to pick a side to jump on, or they need to just go lay down, right, in their cell and close the door and hope nobody comes in. Um, I had no problem that night. I walked out. I saw the two leaders having a conversation. I walked up to them, talked to them what was going on. Nothing ended up happening, but that was one thing that they weren't telling us. They wanted the opportunity. The inmates wanted the opportunity to handle that on their own, and that's definitely not something you want to have happen in prison. And it was like they said this, so we're gonna fight people, make them bleed. I don't understand how words do that to people, but and I think that's a key thing there too is words cannot get under your skin. If you can be triggered by words, and everyone says they can't, but most people are liars. If you can be triggered by words, don't work in prison. Find another job. Don't work in prison if you can be triggered by words. Any words. You need to be inoffendable to be successful in that career. And if you're easily offended, then you're going to have a very, very, very long career, a very, very tough career. Can you survive prison if you're weak? Prisons are communities. Listen, the majority of inmates that I worked with in my career, uh, I don't remember their name. I probably didn't say a word to them. Didn't need to. I would say the grand majority of inmates are there to do their time and just to go. And someone that might consider someone, let's say physically weak, someone that is very physically small, is going to fit into that ether. Okay. Yes, there's gangs and there's probably some type of internal benefit for being in those gangs or protection or something like that, right? But the grand majority of people in prison these days are just doing their time. They're treating it like a really bad country club that you can't go home from, right? Not the best beds, not the best food, but they're just trying to do their thing until they get home. So yeah, if you're weak, you can definitely survive prison. And then also, I will tell you this, like I'm not trying to boast regarding physical strength. I'm pretty okay, right? Um, but some of the best communicators, some of the best people that I saw that were able to talk inmates down without it escalating to something physical were officers you might look at and think are physically weak, but they are mentally very, very strong. However, I will say this: if you're mentally weak and physically strong, if you're mentally weak in any way, whether you're strong or not, if you're mentally weak, you don't want to be in prison as an inmate or as an officer. If you're mentally weak as an officer, you're just going to be frustrated all the time. Why aren't they listening to me? When people ask me about my career, I joke around and I say, I just got paid a lot of money to tell inmates no, right? Because they're always asking you for something to try and get over on you, get something that they shouldn't have. And, I have no problem saying I probably picked that up from inmates. It's like, I have no problem asking questions, even if I know the answer is no, because the worst answer is no, right? That's the worst it could be. But sometimes it turns out to be yes. Unfortunately, in prison, they do that until one. In fact, I want to tell officers before I get to the next one. There's a game. If you're thinking about being a corrections officer, there's a game that inmates play, and I called it 20 questions and out. Right? They go in there. Hey, do you know about this? Do you know about this? Do you know about this? And you're answering, well, yeah, I know about it, but you're not giving any details. And then finally, they ask you a question that you don't know anything about, and it could be even something that they don't know anything about. It could be something that they made up. Okay, and they're like, oh, why the F I'm listening to you? You don't know anything. And now they're trying to piss you off. Yeah, I do. And then you try and show how much you know. Like you can't be mentally weak and fall into that game. Okay. Like inmates are going to say stuff like, it was really funny is that I worked with a guy named, I'm not going to say his name, but I worked with a guy in the special housing unit. So I was the lead guy in the day and he was the lead guy in the afternoon. And it'd be funny is like inmates would try and pit us against each other, but they forget that me and him are friends and we would talk. So I'd show up to work and the inmate would be like, hey, the evening lead guy, he's been talking some schmack about you. Wow, really? What'd he say? Oh, he just said you were like a B word, right? Oh, okay, thanks. You know what? I'll go beat him up for you. All right. And then I would tell him, it's like, yeah, the inmates are saying this, and then that officer would tell me, well, they said you were saying this about me, and we would joke about it. Like, you can't fall for those games, okay? You can't. If an inmate said it, it's probably a lie. All right, I'm just saying, okay, or at least exaggerated. All right, people are gonna get mad at me over this one. The craziest thing you saw in prison. Okay, I'm gonna say the safe stuff that I can put on here and not get demonetized. Um, The craziest thing I saw in prison. All right. I I had an inmate. When I saw this question, this is the thing that came to mind. This is probably not the craziest thing that I saw. Like I just talked about a helicopter thing, but the things that fascinated me are the inmates that would, kind of hurt themselves for attention, but then they debilitate themselves. So we had an inmate that cut his feet open, the bottom of his feet for and we were part of this investigation and we got to see him talk to a psychologist and all that stuff and he did it for attention. He admitted that, but he cut the bottoms of the feet open, so now all of a sudden he needed it. He did this because he was angry at officers and everybody else, but now he needed more assistance, right? Because he cut the bottoms of his feet for attention because he didn't want to have any scars that he could see. Like it was weird to see, but there was all kinds of things that I saw. I remember me and an officer. So me at the time, I'm about 170 pounds. I'm probably the size I am right now, actually. Back then, except some of that weight was a little bit healthier and up here, right? And then, but another guy that I worked with was a 300 pounder. And we have this inmate that he weighed 140 pounds. He's about 5'6", and this guy is doing push-ups with me and that other officer on top of him, just like Superman, man. Just like that was pretty crazy too. And you know what? This is one of those questions that I get asked a lot. And I always keep it safe. I never tell the gory stories, because obviously what I'm saying is there's been some really deep gore that I'll never project into somebody's brain ever again. But yeah, those are some of the crazy things. Why? I mean, you just you get such a high tolerance for this stuff that it doesn't seem abnormal. You're just used to seeing it at work, I guess. Are prison gangs really in control? That's a movie thing. Like I remember watching like first and foremost, segregated yards haven't existed in decades. Okay. So you see like movies where they have a modern day black yard or white yard or anything like that. That doesn't exist. They might have certain areas that they control on a rec yard or that are there, but I bet money that if you look at it today and then go look at it a year, all of them moved, right? All of them changed. It's the structural integrity of prison gangs isn't really there anymore. And the reason is that as they identify leaders, they keep an eye on leaders, and as those leaders cause a problem, they ship them somewhere else. And so it's constant. Like you're allowed to organize to a certain degree. Like you're allowed to have like a gaggle of friends is really just about as much as investigations inside of a prison will let you have. You can have a gaggle of loose friends, but if it starts getting anything more organized than that, then they start shipping inmates out, you know? So no, prison gangs are not controlled. They don't have sit down meetings with the warden to discuss what prison operations are or anything like that. None of that really, because you have to remember something, okay? I think when people write prison movies, like they think that the inmates could get out at any time. You have to remember, they're locked in there. As long as the public is safe, like they're not going to get anything, right? We don't have to give them something to stay in prison, okay? Like like prison gangs really in control? No. Now here's the thing: can they be a problem? Yes. Are prison gangs a problem? Yes. There are gang affiliations that are much more dangerous than many other affiliations. And when when you find out that somebody has an affiliation like that, your ears perk up, your eyes open a little bit more, and you keep an eye on them. What do inmates think when you walk in? I'm willing to bet there's a whole bunch of young COs that will read that question. If they had the opportunity to answer that question, they're going to, they know what's up. They know what's up. Uh, I'm going to answer this question the correct way, the way that every single officer should answer this question. I want you to pay attention to this. If you're an officer, okay, what should inmates think when you walk in? You should not care. Okay? You shouldn't care. Their opinion does not matter for you to do your job. You need to go in there. You need to do your rounds. You need to do your shakedowns. You need to monitor your entrances and exits. You need to, do whatever your job is for that day based on your post orders. And uh, what an inmate thinks does not factor into your day. Okay. I think everyone in prison should try to be respectful. I think it's a good idea to watch really good. Um, like I just watched a video from Derek at More Plates and More Dates, and it's not a new video, it's an older one, but it was a steroid user in Reno, Nevada, steroid user that was also on meth, was being arrested. And I think that video of the officers talking to that roided out meth head. Okay, this guy's huge. He knows how to fight, on steroids and meth, probably some other stuff too. And you just hear the officers talking him down, like talking him down, not talking down to him, talking him down, not letting him escalate the situation. They're not responding in anger. I thought that was a great video, and it's entertaining too. Derek always puts together good videos. That's More Plates, More Dates, Reno, Nevada, steroid meth user. If you Google that, it'll be the first. It will be an obvious thumbnail. Okay, the guy's got his shirt off in the thumbnail, and he's just ripped. And you look at the guy, and it's like if I saw that guy at night in front of me, I wouldn't be enjoying my day, But how they talked him down and they didn't let him get under his skin, I thought that'd be a great training video for all law enforcement. So, what do inmates think when you walk in? I don't care. I never asked. Uh, it wasn't a factor to me. I'm there to do a job. Wow. That was all the questions for now. So if you've got a question that you'd like to see a former corrections officer answer, type it in the comments in this video. Okay, in this video, I'll go back and I'll review the comments, and when there's enough, I'll do another Ask a Corrections Officer video. But please, in order to catch that, if you want to see more of this, if you're actually still hearing this, you should probably like and subscribe. I mean, if you're hearing my voice right now, it kind of makes sense. So, but I appreciate you guys sticking around. Appreciate watching this. I hope you got something out of it. Uh, as always, if you're Bureau of Prisons, if you have any TSP questions, you know who to call. That's me. And then make sure you like and subscribe. Most of the time, I close out with "We'll be back next time with BOP headlines." But maybe next time I see you, we will go over some more questions that the internet has for former corrections officer.